Hey, what's up, friends? Ray with Talking Tinworks. How y'all doing? I've got this beautiful white oak bowl that I just finished up and done turning on the lathe and put a nice coat of finish on. So follow me along as we turn this bowl and I show you the process from start to finish, including some techniques that I don't normally use, kind of like a bottom feeding bowl gouge and negative rake scraping. I'm also used for the first time finish on here that I've never used before, and I'll show you the whole process I used for that. So stick around, friends, and check it out. Thanks. Okay, so that sigh of relief or frustration was me trying to determine what side I wanted to make the top and bottom of the bowl. As you can see, there's a large bark inclusion that I decided to keep in the bottom of the bowl, and I believe that was the correct decision. You can also see I missed, I missed the center a little bit, but that's what happens when you eyeball things. It is what it is. So we're starting out with left-handed push cuts, kind of just staying out of the line of fire, and we are going to true this up into a cylinder. They're not aggressive cuts by any means because this is semi-green. It's pretty hard. It's white oak, but it's from a really old tree. The tree was over 200 years old, and so my experience with this particular tree is it's very hard and is it cuts nice, but it sometimes has a little bit of chip out, and it feels rough and tough like you're turning burl. So now that we've got a cylinder, we're going to go ahead and flatten off the bottom and just get things running true. We've got everything true, and we kicked up the RPMs. We're going about 1,000, 1,200 right now. And now we're going to start rounding the corner. It's kind of, I'm kind of torn about making a cylinder and flattening off the end versus just rounding off the corners as you go and just hogging the material. But I watch a lot of Stuart Batty, and this is more his style. He doesn't mount on a screw chuck in his demonstrations, but he makes a cylinder and flattens off the bottom and then starts around the corner. And as you can see, it was the right decision to keep that bark inclusion in the bottom of the bowl because it turns out to be quite an interesting and stunning feature. Okay, and so right there, I realized that the tool was dull. And I left this in here just so you can see it doesn't take much to just walk over to the grinder and, touch it up on the platform. Doing platform grinding, 40/40 grind, just like Stuart Batty. And I must apologize also for my big old head being in the way for half this opening, you know, the rounding of the bowl and the turning of the outside. This also happened to be a small crotch piece. So it's actually got some really nice figure in there, and it's a real interesting bowl. So right now I'm just kind of flattening out the bottom, getting it a little bit wider so I can establish a 4-inch or 100 mil tenon. I like to take my time and make sure the tenon's right. That's the foundation of when you flip the bowl around and go to hollow. If your tenon isn't squared away, that's when you can have a lot of vibration issues, or you could actually launch the bowl across the room. So it's worth the extra time to just dial in that tenon, make sure that shoulder's flat and everything's squared away. Now once the tenon's formed, then I make the final adjustments to the curve on the outside because I know where the bottom's going to be, and now I can work around it. Okay, now I switched over to my 1/2-inch bottom feeding bowl gouge. And, you know, it's for a traditional grind, whatever you want to call it. But I'm trying to get a lot finer and more smooth and detailed finishing cut with it. And I can also come in at that foot and hit that angle a little bit better than the 40/40 grind. This one is ground just like Stuart Batty does, with a 40-degree relief angle and then or bevel and a 60-degree primary. And the wings are taken back maybe 5 to 10 degrees, so it's not flat all the way across as an exact traditional grind. But you can really see the difference in the size and the look of the shavings of this half-inch bottom feeder versus the 5/8 40/40. And then I kept this in here just so you guys can see this as a little hint. I used my tool rest as a levering point for the Tommy bar to be able to easily screw off that bowl. All right, we've had enough Stuart Batty influences, so now let's go with some more Thomas Love or Richard Raffin style and use a 3/8 spindle gouge to use as a depth grill and establish the bottom of the bowl depth.
Okay.
And I thought I'd note at up to this point, I'm still intending on keeping this a natural edge. There's a little bit of curvature to the rim that was left in and was a thought of design. I wanted to say there was some chainsaw marks left that changed my decision. They showed through into the rim. And so I'm going to go ahead and do away with the natural edge idea. I'm trying to keep a little bit of meat in the walls before I establish the final rim dimensions and wall thickness. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that, but I can see it, the kind of chainsaw grooves in there, and I didn't like those. This is that same half-inch bottom feeding bowl gouge. It's a D-Ways tool bottom feeder, but I have it in a Stuart Batty bolster and handle. When I kept looking over my shoulder is what it looks like. I'm looking at the outside contour of the bowl to judge and assess how thin I'm getting towards the bottom. And that's why I have to switch over to the bottom feeder to get a better idea of where I'm actually at in the bottom of the bowl. I don't really like messing with calipers and other measuring devices and to stop turning. I just I eyeball the outside contour and the inside contour, and I'll stop and feel them with my fingers. But I don't typically measure much of anything, to be honest.
Oh, I don't really want to do this.
And so you hear me say, oh man, I don't really want to do this because I'm worried about the rim exploding, taking it down probably a ½ inch or so. And I use the bottom feeder for that because it's kind of it's almost like skating across the bottom of a platter to just shorten this rim down. This is a homemade negative rake made out of Amazon tool steel, and I just kind of imitated a French curve, and I ground it to 25 degrees on either side, so it's 50 degrees included. And what I'm doing is cleaning up any uneven tool marks or, you know, I'm not very good with the bottom feeder yet, and I leave I don't want to call them gouges, but small ridges in the transition. So And this is also an easy and controlled method for removing small amounts of material. Alright friends, lost the sanding and the initial footage of the removing the foot. But here we are, we're in cold jaws, we're turning at 600 RPM, and we are just removing the tenon. Now, on these bowls, every one of these bowls I've done from this tree, where I really like the grain, the feathering, sometimes it looks like spaghetti oak or burley. I leave the bottom very plain. I want the wood to be the showcase and the highlight, not my turning ability. I don't put grooves, beads, or any other decorations. I keep a very boring and plain, minimalist foot on this particular tree. I want the tree to shine, not my turning abilities. And so what I did also was I left a little bit of the tenon and blended in that corner. And so what I'm having to do is fix the contour and the outer curve, because like I said, I kind of left a little bit of the tenon. I was worried about the thickness of the bowl, and I like to have a little bit of weight into the bottom of a bowl on a thin rimmed bowl like this. So now I have to take that curve back up and blend everything back together. And this is a Harbor Freight skew that, again, I use as a negative rake scraper. Same angles, 50 included, 25 on each side, and you just grind the one side, the bottom side, to raise a burr on the top side. If you want the profile of the skew to go the other direction, then you simply flip it over and grind the other side. Using a skew as a negative rake is a really versatile tool. Mentioned for safety purposes, this is the only time that a skew should be used on cross grain orientation, and that's as a negative rake scraper. I'm not peeling, I'm not slicing. I'm strictly scraping with it. It's a little bit on the tricky side because I also have to make the bottom and the foot concave, because this was turned semi-green and it's going to warp. So it has to be concave so that the bottom doesn't warp outwards, and then you have a nice wobbly rocking bowl. whole time you're doing this, you have to be very cognizant of the coal jaws. They're kind of out there and will smack you pretty good. Thanks for sticking around, friends, and checking out this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it and got something from it. I love this bowl. It's a beautiful piece of wood, and I would really appreciate if you all give me the like and subscribe to the channel for more wood turning content, and leave me some comments down below. I love hearing from you guys and interacting with y'all. Thanks, friends.
Alright, I've never used this stuff. I don't know. Let's see how she does, I guess. Hopefully it's not too frozen. Oh, it's kind of goopy. We'll give it a good stir. I don't know. My buddy on social media, Scott, said he was working through, well, he said he was working through a can of you know, the brand name. I don't know what he was working through, so I don't know if this is the same stuff or not, but let's see what it does. This is, what is this? This is Osmo Polyx oil clear gloss. Let's see what it does, man. It's really kind of bringing out that white oak. It's a little bit thinner than Odie's oil. What happened was I had made a rolling pin, and, you know, I finished it with Odie's oil, and he said, you know, we were talking about how expensive it was, and he said he was working through a can of Osmo. And so, well, I picked a can, just any random can up. Look at that stuff, man. Oh, man, when oak is on, it's on. This is a really weird piece. It was kind of a crotch piece. I think this is some of my, well, it is. It's that 280-year-old white oak I found out there in Novi. And I love this stuff. And I try to kind of treat it rustic and natural looking. Like you can, does the camera pick that up? You can see through this hole, this bark inclusion right here. And I didn't feel like doing an epoxy job or anything. I'm kind of bummed out that I did put a little bit of the CA super glue in there and then left it, but it was starting to split. And it was splitting on the rim and everywhere else. So I had to stop the splitting from going forward. And so I did it. It isn't too bad. I don't think it takes away from it too much. It kind of blends in there with the rest of the stuff. This finish feels pretty good. I'm not sure what it's going to do when it dries, but I've got like this big hole here, another knot right here, this bark inclusion. I believe it was, yeah, it's kind of a crotch piece, and this is the feathering, this real dark heartwood. You know, because here's some of the rings going this way. It's just a real weird piece of wood, man. I I just randomly started cutting stuff with chainsaws one day and trying to save pieces that were kind of cracking and splitting and falling apart. And this is one of them. It's just been sitting on the floor of my shop for a while. So, like I said, I like to give it more of a natural, kind of just a simple finish. So, I don't know how to use this stuff. I might look it up. I might let it sit for an hour, kind of like I do Odie's oil, and then buff it off. I'm not sure. I didn't give it much thought. But I was filming, and I wanted to get the grain pop, you know, before anything else. before I got sidetracked because I was going to rough out some bowls and do some other stuff. When I do these bowls like this, I like a simple bottom. So you can see the feature. You know, it's a feathered crotch piece. So it's going to be full of figure. You put all that stuff in the bottom of the bowl so you don't turn it away. And so I want a plain Jane, you know, foot or lack of foot to highlight the wood, not my turning abilities with features and decorations and stuff like that. It's just the way I go. You know, you've got all this natural stuff in here. I don't want to put beads and grooves and burn lines and all kinds of other stuff in there to kind of take away from the natural wood. So far, I'm liking this Osmo poly stuff, poly oil. It feels good. It doesn't smell too bad. Pops the grain good. Didn't really change its color. You know, it made it come alive. Just kind of rub it in. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like after 8 hours. 8 or 10 hours is what it said on the can for it to dry. You know? It smells like it's got solvents, but not bad. And then it's got a bunch of stuff that says it becomes food safe and all that once it's cured. Kind of like Waterlock's original does. So, I don't know, man. That's a nice luster on there, though. Just sitting there like it is. I'm liking it. The bolt came out good. Yeah, I was almost keeping a natural edge on it, if you guys see me turning it. And it was starting to kind of chip out and tear out, so I just evened it off. This wasn't twice turned, it was once turned. But as I was turning it, the blank was pretty well dry. Not maybe 100%. I expect to get a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot. Man, this is some beautiful finish, though. On some beautiful wood. This, Scott, I don't know if this is the same stuff you got, but man, thanks for turning me on just to the name brand of it, period. Because I think this is going to be some good stuff. I really do.